Hello, my friends. My name is Justice Knight, and welcome back to the broadcast. Completely something unscheduled. I actually had another broadcast recorded. I'll play it down the road here, but this came across. I was on my Twitter feed, preparing a bunch of stories, wondering why Epstein Island finally got raided by the FBI, and I came across the number one trending with everything happening in the news today was my Bernie story. I'm like, well, something's amiss. Something's wrong. And then I ran back to my computer later and found this, published on heavy.com. Why is my Bernie story trending on Twitter? The exact same question I had. Now, I wasn't going to air this until I read that I'll be voting for Bernie Sanders in 2020. So I'm assuming that, although it doesn't look like it, she's of age to vote. But nonetheless, I think the testimony she gives is critical to understand how this story is going to start what appears to be very innocent, but get very devious towards the end. So it's important you watch it from start to finish. Listen in for just one moment.
My name is Abigail Lowry, and I support Bernie for 2020 because he is the only candidate that has continually supported our generation over decades now. He understands the crisis that is climate change. And if we do not address these matters now, then we will not have a planet to call home. He understands that these are vital concerns that cannot be continuously tabled. They must be addressed, and they must be addressed today. And he understands that there is a crisis surrounding student debt, and in order to grow up our generation to be productive members of society, we must fix the student debt crisis and allow people to go to school and receive a proper education. Vote Bernie 2020.
Probably one of the most painful minutes I've made you watch, and I apologize for that, but that is the mentality that's happening around us that we must be very well aware of. This on the Epic Times. The American left goes increasingly Stalinist and communist and fascist and socialist, and we could continue on all the ists, but the only problem is none of them seem to stand for America. We're going to come back to this article, come back to everything we're going to cover, but before we do, I'm going to ask you once again, as I always do, first, if you have not subscribed to me on YouTube, please do. If you do, make sure the bell is checked, because without it checked, it makes no difference. If you're subscribed, you won't know when I publish a new broadcast. In case you want to double check, go to my website, justiceaknight.com, where it's indicated now by the large yellow arrow. Put in your email address. You'll get a notification when I publish a story only. Trust me, I don't have time to do anything else. I just try to do everything to get you the information necessary. Just below that is my donation portal, because when you speak like I do, you don't get paid for it. So without your support, these videos cease to exist. Something a little more personal on the Instagram page, and then, of course, Twitter, where I, again, said, can someone please tell me what took them so blanking long to finally go, the FBI, to raid Epstein Island? I guess they had to wait long enough for all the evidence to be destroyed, or go in there to make sure all the evidence is destroyed. But nonetheless, my second, again, I try to do a secondary social media source this week is Parler, an amazing one. You can just go there just by clicking on it. I'm just going to show you what comes up on the headlines without searching it. You're going to have Laura Loomer. You're going to have InfoWars, Gavin McInnes. Just continue to see, again, the news that you've missed because they've censored us all into oblivion still exist on other platforms. Go to Parler, subscribe. The link will be in my YouTube. Now back to the primary story. That's right. This published on Newsweek. My Bernie story trends as Americans share why they're voting Sanders in 2020. He will cancel all student debt, more stuff for free, because that appears to be all the younger generation cares about. Free money, free income, free healthcare, and now canceling the student debt makes perfect sense. Well, anyway, this went on. I think it's imperative, though, that we understand one of the major talking points of Bernie Sanders. I'm going to play it for you here. This really speaks for itself.
But I remember, for some reason or other, being very excited when Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba. And I was a kid, and I remember reading that. And it seemed right and appropriate that poor people were rising up against rather ugly rich people. And
you caught that, right? He felt excited when Fidel Castro rose up against those nasty rich people to instill communism. Let that sink in for a moment. Because that's what we're fighting. So that innocent first tweet that you saw isn't as innocent as it appears. I'm going to show you exactly how deeply woven in Bernie Sanders is. He's not just some fringe player that many think. Some old man toting around the stage, dropping some ridiculous lines. Oh, he is. But there's more to that than meets the eye. We'll go back to this Epoch Times story. The American left goes increasingly Stalinist. And we're going to read just very quickly. It began long ago, even before the Roosevelt years, and has ebbed and flowed since. This recent rise can be dated from 1991 when the Vermont congressman, now presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, helped found the Congressional Progressive Caucus, along with, are you ready for it? Representative Maxine Waters and a few others. Sanders at this point was just back from spending his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. That's right. This man appears to like to surround himself with communism. Joining shortly thereafter was a New York congressman, Gerald Nadler. That's right, Jerry Nadler. You see how it circles back around to everybody? Well, we'll read before I go any further. Now leading the impeachment course against Trump, Sanders, as almost everyone knows, was an avowed socialist. But so also, although it's lesser known, was Nadler. See, most people don't know that because they're all intermingled in the Democratic Party, which isn't the Democratic Party anymore. If you haven't opened your eyes to that, the New York congressman was a member of several socialist organizations and was the one who convinced President Bill Clinton to commute during his last days in office Susan Rosenberg's sentence. For those of you who don't know, in 1981, Rosenberg allegedly drove a getaway car for the left-wing terror group, the Weather Underground and Black Liberation Army, after she had robbed a Brinks truck, killing 2 policemen and a security guard. In the process, Rosenberg got away. Her sentence was, well, forgiven. Sanders' web weaves very deep, all the way to this man. I wanted to put the face with the name. The man who's suddenly going after President Trump incessantly while Bernie Sanders is running. And even though it makes no sense, now you start to understand this very, very deceitful web that is spun around you. But we can keep going to, again, and I love how Fernand Armandi points out here, one of the only people in the United States Congress who voted against the Maginski Act twice and did not vote in favor of the Russian sanctions bill twice. Guess who? Bernie Sanders. Once again, a heart for Russia, the Maginski Act, formerly known as the Russia and Moldova Jackson, is a bipartisan bill passed by the United States Congress and signed into law by President Barack Obama in December of 2012, intending to punish Russian officials responsible for the death of Russian tax accountant Sergei Maginski in Moscow back in 2009. Since 2016, the bill, which applies globally, authorizes the U.S. government to sanction those who it sees as a human rights offender, freezing their assets and banning them from entering the United States. Makes sense. Something with the President Barack Obama that he did that I actually agree with. But yet, Bernie Sanders is against. Well, it's all going to make sense here shortly. We're going to go back to this speech.
Watching the debate. And at that time, well, we can talk about Cuba now, I was very excited and impressed by the Cuban Revolution. And there was Kennedy and Nixon talking about which particular method they should use about destroying the revolution. And I remember the irony, as we learned the history later on, Kennedy was saying that Nixon was too soft on communism. Let me pick up a point that Rick was making. In Cuba, we should deal firmly with Fidel Castro. And Nixon was playing the role of, hey, you got to be patient. You know, you can't do these things. You got to negotiate. Well, of course, what he was upset about is that secretly they were planning the Bay of Pigs invasion right then. So he was the liberal, and Kennedy was playing the conservative. And actually, you know, when you read novels, people say there's a sick feeling in your stomach. Usually I'm sufficiently unemotional not to be sick, but I actually got up from the room and almost left to puke.
You almost left to puke because JFK was speaking against communism. I'll keep connecting the dots for those of you who didn't know all this already. Saikat Chakrabarti. Like, how did you get this around, Justice? Well, remember, I do a lot of research, and I've been watching this guy for a long time. He was the chief of staff for AOC. Wait till we dig into his connections. That's right. If you're annoyed by AOC, he's the one to blame because he's the one that founded the entire movement. You see, AOC got upset because Saikat, for the first time pretty much in his career, made a huge mistake, a blunder, and he spoke out against other Democrats, remembering that he's not a Democrat, nor is she, although that's the party they serve on. So anybody that opposes their socialist agenda, they attack to the point of saying They certainly seem hell-bent to do black and brown people today what the old Southern Democrats did in the 1940s. Well, that tweet was removed, and so was his position. Well, why is he so critical? Well, Schicott was Bernie Sanders' campaign manager. And when that didn't work out so good, he kind of wound his way back around into two organizations, ending with the Justice Democrats, which you see here. I'm going to enter the site just to remind you again of those who are in the Justice Democrats. You'll recognize many of them: Presley, Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC. So you see where these socialist undertones, these communist undertones, let's call it what it is, come from. Because the Justice Democrats, along with Shaikat Chakrabarti, was founded by Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. That's right. And there's been some, conspiracy theories surrounding the involvement of that man. Now, most people wouldn't believe that until you see the Move On, which he is directly connected to, organization voted for, guess who? More so than anybody else, getting the most votes ever, and by the widest margin in history, voted for Bernie Sanders to be their number one candidate. You start to see why you scratch your head and see how these are all woven together, but back to this just illuminating speech.
And you read the New York Times and you understand why they are not talking about what's going on in Nicaragua. Okay, that's the important story. The important story is not Nicaragua. It's not the United States government attitude toward Nicaragua, which is no different than it's been in 50 years. The United States has the right to destroy any government in Latin America that they want, and that's been consistent for 50 or 100 years. There's nothing new about that. What is new is why, when you read the New York Times, the real truth is not being told and how that's obfuscated.
How dare the New York Times, and I'm never going to defend the New York Times. Back then, they were known as the paramount news source. How dare they lie about communism? Bernie calling them out. See, he'll call anybody out if you touch communism, if you say anything bad. Don't worry about America. He could care less about that. But you say one thing wrong about communism and all hell's going to break loose. So back to my Bernie story, right? The hashtag that was trending so highly. And we could just look through the feed here very quickly. I'm going to go down. And basically, I've read it all. You'll see Medicare for all, free Medicare. You're going to see forgiveness of college debt. You're going to see NAFTA come up. You're going to see his announcement of 2020. Everybody's ecstatic. And then there's one thing, though, however, they forgot to screen out. Again, somebody who will help our economy transform and help our climate. Oh, Bernie Sanders is the savior. You'll notice the age group again that the Justice Democrats also target. But what I love when you go to these sites is the things that they miss. You see, they miss this guy because no screener could ever catch sarcasm. That's why I told you to hang on till the end, because I want you to listen to this very quickly.
Hi, I'm Jeremy from Los Angeles, and I support Bernie Sanders for president because, communism has never really failed, It's just never really been tried. If you think about it, right? And also because millionaires and billionaires shouldn't have more stuff than me just because they took all the risk and pay all the taxes and also employ all of us and everything. And also, just because my college degree doesn't qualify me in any way to work in today's job market doesn't mean that those same millionaires and billionaires and also the entire middle class shouldn't be forced at gunpoint to pay for it through coercive taxation. So if you support Bernie like me, then please go over to whatever his website is and do whatever it is you're supposed to do, because it would be hilarious to have an 80-year-old pudding-eating radical be our president. Am I right?
No, they missed it. They didn't screen it out. And that's the comedy that we all must realize in the events that are unfolding today, because we can never forget where these people started and what they represent. A man who says that he was excited for a communist revolution, now actually being given any airtime and press as a legitimate and potential presidential candidate. What happened to the United States? America, wake up. We aren't this uneducated. We must remain vigilant against all these attacks, no matter how innocent they may start, but in actuality, how devious they end. Because the reality is, anyone who supports him and says they have a sick feeling for anybody who speaks against him, or they get excited when his revolution takes seed over the rich and ugly people, that's reality, America. There's no disguising this. This isn't TV. This isn't a made-for-TV movie. This is the real deal that we aren't afraid to cover here, and that's why you're here. And I look forward to seeing your comments. I need your thumbs up and I need your shares, because without you, nobody would find out about any of this. So until next time, my name is Justice Nate. Godspeed and God bless. I can't thank you enough for being here.